Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. My name is Liqun Pan. I'm an English language lecturer at Xi'an Jiaotong-Liverpool University. Today my colleagues Haiying, Song, Yitao and I will deliver our presentation on the topic of fostering intercultural competence in online EAP classrooms. Next slide please. Here is the outline of our presentation. There are four main parts. First, I will provide an overview of some definitions and components of intercultural competence. Then I will explain the rationale for incorporating intercultural competence into academic English classrooms. Afterwards, my colleague Haiying will introduce some teaching activities, and Yitao will elaborate on some practical considerations as well as possible solutions. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at some definitions provided by some previous scholars. According to Knapp, Rogers, and Steinfeld, intercultural competence can be defined as the level at which an individual is able to effectively and appropriately exchange information during interpersonal interaction with the representatives of other cultures. Similarly, Fantini and Tirmizi refer to intercultural competence as a complex of abilities needed to perform effectively and appropriately when interacting with others who are linguistically and culturally different from oneself. So these two definitions mainly focus on the abilities of effective communication and appropriate performance with people from other cultures. More recently, Bartosh points out that intercultural competence is a part of professional cultural competence, which is reflected in the knowledge, skills, and abilities of a specialist that facilitate correct assessment of the specifics and the conditions of interaction, relationships, and communication, and to find adequate forms of influence to maintain an atmosphere of mutual trust and constructive cooperation and achieve common goals. Next slide, please. Bartosh divided intercultural competence into four components, namely behavioral, personal, motivational, and cognitive. Here are the four components and the indicators. For behavioral components, the main indicators are attitude towards other nationalities, representatives, the mentality, lifestyle, desire, and readiness for intercultural interaction and cultural enrichment. Personal component refers to the demonstration of moral qualities necessary for intercultural interaction. Motivational component means the ability to overcome the formed stereotypes, perform intercultural interaction on a tolerant basis, avoid conflict situations, adapt to certain norms of behavior, take the initiative in the implementation of intercultural interaction. While the indicators for cognitive component mean the knowledge on essence and content of intercultural tolerance, interethnic conflicts, the quality of a tolerant person, common and different issues in the native and ethnic minority culture. Next slide, please. However, there are some slightly different categorizations of the components according to Tarifa and her co-workers. They divided intercultural competence into cognitive, emotional, and behavioral components. While cognitive component is linguistic skills and lingual culture skills, which is mainly about language and culture skills and knowledge. For example, knowledge and understanding of community behavior of another culture, changing personal community behavior in the interactive process when necessary. Emotional component refers to empathy skills and reflective skills, which means the ability to show empathy, tolerance, and understanding to other people while reflecting on oneself. And behavioral component means sociability, and a lack of aggressiveness, which refers to the ability to build relationship with others and avoid conflicts. Next slide, please. Now let's move on to explain the rationale for incorporating intercultural competence into online EAP classrooms. Firstly, as a Sino-British university located in Suzhou, China, we have students and teachers from a diverse range of language and cultural backgrounds. It is important for students to understand other cultures, and it is our mission to cultivate them to become global citizens with international perspectives and competitiveness. Secondly, we believe that well-developed intercultural competence is one of the most important soft skills for students' success, academically and professionally, in the future careers. No matter whether they choose to become entrepreneurs, scientists, architects, engineers, educators, etc., it is crucial for students to develop the intercultural competence in our increasingly global environment. Furtherly, incorporating intercultural competence into online EAP classroom can contribute to a more dynamic and student-centered learning environment. For example, group work with peers to understand different cultures can contribute to the development of tolerance skills, empathic skills, reflective skills, and cooperative skills. The teaching activities that my colleague will introduce today can well illustrate this point. Furthermore, the current global pandemic situation has necessitated the implementation of active online teaching technologies. This is also the case with our EAP programs, which need to be moved online, and EAP class is not just about improving students' academic English skills, such as listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It is also about improving and facilitating students' holistic development, such as behavioral, personal, motivational, and cognitive skills development. So teachers are faced with the task of fostering students' intercultural awareness and communication skills in online teaching environments. Thankfully, there is a wide array of tech tools which can facilitate the implementation of teaching activities. The utilization of such tech tools not only creates opportunities for intercultural communication and reflection, but also makes the integration feasible and effective. Now my colleague Haiying will illustrate the teaching activities. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Liqun. Now let's take a look at two activities for use in online EAP classrooms to increase students' interest and develop their competence in regards to intercultural communication. One will focus on speaking and the other will focus on writing more. The first activity is called Modern United Nations Discussion, which is similar as a famous Modern United Nations Conference, but I adapt it into the easier version. The purpose of this activity is to motivate students' cultural exploration and perspectives exchange. The whole discussion will focus on the language of agree, disagree, cause effect, and compare contrast. Next slide, please. Okay, breakout rooms and pool will be used as mentors in this activity. Because the topic is very academic and related to current affairs, it's more suitable for intermediate and high-level students. It will take approximately 90 minutes, including the preparation, topic introduction, and the final reflection. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's move on to the practical procedures. The first step is to introduce the topic, which is the social economic effects of global pandemics, and provide 4 options for students to choose. They are China, USA, UK, and India. And the teachers can set up a poll to make them choose their first preference, which country they would like to represent for. However, it doesn't mean that their chosen country will be the final decision. If the number of the 3 options are severely unbalanced, the teacher can ask students to do a simple debate why they choose this specific country. They need to begin their debate to state out their justifications. It could take approximately 10 minutes. Next slide, please. Okay, After their negotiation, students will be equally arranged into 4 breakout rooms, China, India, UK, and USA respectively. Also, the teacher can assign 1 coordinator to facilitate the following background information research and further discussion for 30 minutes. When this step is finished, they can go back to the main room to share their point of view according to the alphabetic sequence. Teachers should encourage everyone in each group to speak. The final step is to reflect on the whole process and try to understand other teams' ideas by using episodic thinking. Also, in this process, the teacher can provide some reflective questions, such as, do you agree with other teams' ideas? How do you think of these ideas? And what did you learn from this discussion? Okay, next slide, please. Now, I'd like to share another activity involving the use of the forum, which is functionality embedded in most learning management systems. This activity is called an intercultural interaction, and we believe it works best with students with intermediate to high intermediate English proficiency. In this activity, students will describe, analyze, and share an intercultural interaction they have encountered. They will also read and respond to interactions from their peers. The aim of this activity is threefold. First and foremost, students will be introduced to key concepts related to intercultural communication, such as stereotype, othering, and cultural shock, and apply them to analyze a real-life scenario. This not only ensures students have an accurate understanding of the relevant concepts, but also helps them to connect their learning with what happens outside the classroom. Secondly, by asking students to comment on their peers' posts in the forum, they're exposed to a diverse range of intercultural experience and views, and at the same time, develop critical thinking skills. This is because in responding to their peers, they need to put themselves in someone else's shoes and ask themselves questions such as, have I experienced a similar encounter? What should I have done if I had been in a similar situation? Last but not least, in terms of academic English skills, the activity will afford opportunities to practice useful language functions, such as discussing cause and effect, expressing agreement and disagreement, confirming one's understanding, and seeking clarification. Next slide, please. To implement this activity, the teacher must ensure that the interactive whiteboard and the forum are available. Students will need to bring their own devices, such as laptops or tablets. Approximately 1.5 hours should be arranged to allow for the completion of the activity. Next slide, please. In preparation for this activity, the teacher needs to find a YouTube video which can be used to introduce students to the relevant concepts and creates a forum on the module page. Okay, next slide. Okay, now let's take a detailed look at the procedures. Basically, it can be divided into 6 steps. To begin with, students will watch a YouTube video and take notes. They can then be put into different breakout rooms and compare notes. Alternatively, the teacher can ask some questions to check their understanding of the key concepts and provide clarification as needed. Then, on the interactive whiteboard, the teacher writes down a list of language functions necessary for performing the activity and asks students to share what they know by adding phrases to the categories. Here, the teacher's role is to encourage contribution from all students and provide feedback as needed. It's also a good idea to have students check their peers' entries, sharing with the class new phrases they have learned and point out any mistakes they have noticed. In the following step, students will be given 20 minutes to think about the intercultural interaction they have personally experienced and write a 150-word paragraph to describe, analyze, and reflect on it, using the intercultural concepts and language functions introduced in the previous steps. Okay, next slide, please. When they finish, they will be directed to post their writing in the forum. After everyone has done this, they are asked to read their peers' work and choose at least one to respond to. They can ask questions, agree or disagree with the analysis, or give suggestions for what to do in the future. It's important to make it clear that meaningful responses are welcomed, and very short comments, such as "this is a wonderful experience," are simply not acceptable. As a wrap-up, a class vote can be conducted to decide who has the most interesting interaction, the most in-depth analysis. Well, this is my part. Now I will introduce my colleague Yitao Tony to give us the practical considerations and solutions.
Okay, thanks, Haiying. Okay, so hopefully now we have a better understanding about how to use tech tools to develop students' intercultural competence in online EAP classes. However, there are some practical considerations which deserve our attention. So when it comes to technology, not all teachers have equal access to the different tools. Some may feel uncomfortable using the tools due to a lack of proper training. In some cases, even if the tools are available and teachers know how to use them, technical issues can still occur. For example, during class, slow connection to a specific tool can be experienced, especially one that exists outside of the school's learning management system. All these factors can make a teacher less passionate about applying the tools. Of course, the same is true for students. When availability and reliability of the tools pose a challenge, their motivation to participate and learn will likely be significantly impacted. Another important factor is time. It takes time to integrate intercultural competence, topics, and language skills development. Identifying the right tools for use in online classes to facilitate the integration is time-consuming as well, especially for those who are new to online teaching. Once we have made a decision as to how to conduct the class, there are preparations that need to be in place. For example, we may have to do a dry run to test the tool, or prepare detailed instructions on how to perform the activity. When it comes to class time, as EAP practitioners, we all have experienced moments where we had to give up the use of technology as a result of insufficient instructional time. For teachers who teach in teams and are required to strictly follow a predetermined curriculum, the challenge is even greater. Any modifications to the content of a lesson, such as skipping certain activities or tasks to accommodate the use of tech tools, should be approached with caution, as it can lead to the teacher being inconsistent with the rest of the team. Finally, we must admit that students do not always demonstrate the level of motivation we would have expected. Several factors could be at play here. Sometimes it is because of a lack of specific guidance. Students do not know the purpose of the activity or what is expected of them. In addition, their linguistic proficiency and cultural backgrounds can affect their participation. For example, they may not have the required vocabulary to discuss the topic, or they may feel uncomfortable disagreeing publicly due to influence from their own culture. Last but not least, as mentioned before, technical challenges also reduce their willingness to participate. Okay, in the final part of this presentation, I'll try to propose some solutions to the challenges identified. To develop familiarity and confidence in applying various tech tools in their classrooms, teachers should take time to read the instructions or watch the demonstration videos. In addition, the school's IT team can be extremely helpful when it comes to troubleshooting. These resources can be shared with students to help them become more confident about the tools. Teachers can also keep their tech knowledge up to date and sharing best practices by attending in-house and external PD events. In terms of selecting appropriate tools, teachers should prioritize tools integrated with the school's learning management system. This is because those tools are readily available and also usually more reliable. They should also start with less complex ones, which can ease their anxiety and allow them to get in the groove. Additionally, the choice of tools must be based on available technical capabilities. For instance, when slow connectivity is expected, then the use of AR and VR should be reconsidered. Teachers can also benefit from preparing a plan B so that they will not be caught off guard when tech tools fail to work unexpectedly in the middle of a class. To work with the limited time, teachers should work in teams whenever possible. with each responsible for different components of a lesson or different lessons. They should also keep in mind that when it comes to activity development, they don't always have to start from scratch. They can adapt existing activities designed for in-class teaching so that technology can be used to engage students in cross-cultural communication in a virtual setting. If possible, the teacher can advocate a curriculum based on intercultural competence, which will be used as a basis for selecting matching topics and language skills. To ensure there is sufficient class time for activities targeting students' development of intercultural competence, a flipped classroom model can be adopted. For instance, in the second activity, instead of showing the YouTube video in class, students can be instructed to watch it by themselves before class and conduct further research as required. In class, the teacher can include a quick activity, such as matching terms with definitions to check their comprehension. Finally, to increase student engagement, the following measures can be taken. The teacher needs to provide students with specific guidance. One thing they need to do is to clearly explain the rationale of an activity so students can build connections between what they are learning and what is going on outside the classroom. Time should also be spent on clarifying the role of the tech tool so students can fully appreciate its value, instead of seeing it as a waste of precious class time. Also, for each activity, provide them with clear and easy to understand instructions. For example, for teaching activity 2, the teacher can post the instructions in the forum so that they are easily accessible for students. A model paragraph as well as the response can be included as well, so students know what the final product should look like. Considering that students come from varied language and cultural backgrounds, all activities should be scaffolded in a way that facilitates student participation and engagement. Take activity 2, again as an example. As you have noticed, there's a vocabulary activity targeting essential language functions. To encourage students to give meaningful responses to their peers, the teacher can first acknowledge that in some cultures, showing disagreement openly is perceived as being implied, and then continue to assure students that thinking critically is one of the most important skills for university and career success. And it is perfectly okay to ask questions or challenge other people's views, provided that justification is provided and it is done in a respectful manner. Next, given that some students are less proficient in technology than others, teachers can try to utilize those who are more tech-savvy. One way to do this is that in each student group, a tech-savvy student can be appointed as the tech expert who's responsible for troubleshooting and supporting other group members in terms of use of technology. Also, allow for opportunities for reflection. Teachers can use questions such as, what have you learned from this activity? And did you enjoy using this tech tool to guide the reflection? As students engage in dialogue with themselves, their interest in intercultural communication and technology grows at the same time. What they share can also be used by teachers to evaluate their practice regarding activity design and integration of tech tools. For example, was the tech tool appropriate for this activity? Did students really know how to use the tool, or were students given enough time to complete the activity? Finally, to motivate students, awards such as digital badges can be applied, as well know how much they love competition. However, the same activity or tool should not be used repeatedly. In other words, teachers should maintain a repertoire of activities and tech tools and apply them in a way which aligns with class time, student levels, intended learning outcomes, as well as available facilities and equipment. Okay, so with this, we've come to the end of this presentation. We hope that you found it relevant and helpful to your own teaching context. Thank you very much. Now we'll be happy to answer your questions.